Nomad Podcast.
How do you know what you know? Is there such thing as a single truth, or does everyone just experience the world in his or her own reality? And what can we do to constantly blow our own minds and push ourselves outside of our comfort zone to see the world from multiple perspectives? These are the questions we'll explore today with guest Jonathan Kalan, co-founder of Unsettled, a travel platform that emphasizes co-creation of experiences by and for its participants. In a former life, Jonathan was a photojournalist, exposed to many perspectives and atrocities, and was driven to create a platform that would help others gain the perspective of experiencing multiple truths firsthand. We'll talk about what it was like going through the TED Residency incubator program. This was a springboard for Unsettled early on. The dangers of the dopamine addiction that comes with constantly seeking novel stimulation from hypermobility. We'll talk about how to constantly push your boundaries, change perspectives without leaving your own city, ways to do that, the traits that the nomadic lifestyle tends to foster, and much, much more. Jonathan is a very well-spoken, just neat individual. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jonathan Kalan of Unsettled. Nomad Podcast is supported in part by Nomad Prep, an online academy that teaches you everything you need to know to take your job on the road and crush it abroad. Enroll today at nomadprep.com/podcast and get your first 4 days of training completely free. Nomad Prep, take your job on the road and take on the world. All right, welcome Jonathan Kalan to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's great to meet you.
Good to meet you. Now, you are the CEO of Unsettled.
Yeah, that is correct.
And so I heard you describe it at one point on one of the interviews as, was it study abroad for adults? I guess that's kind of the elevator pitch. What's the longer form explanation of what Unsettled is?
That's a great question. There's a lot of ways to describe what we do, and I think it's almost a good problem to have because it means we're doing something a little bit differently. So, I think conventionally the easiest way to describe what Unsettled does is we run 2-week and 30-day co-working retreats for professionals, entrepreneurs, creatives, and people who are seeking to go through kind of a professional transition in incredible destinations all over the world. So, why we call it in some ways a study abroad for adults, as an independent worker, as somebody who is an entrepreneur, who works in the creative sector, I think as you move along in your career, you sort of have less and less opportunities to actually dive into experiences that allow you to meet new people, that allow you to challenge yourself, that allow you to get perspective in a way that is beyond just, let's say, backpacking through a country. And so, we look at Unsettled as really a shared experience about the people, just sort of like a study abroad, in your early 20s, because we provide freedom and flexibility to do what you want, right? We don't have a guided program, a structured program. We are very designed in what we do, and we take a very experienced designer lens to every experience that we run. But it is something that is this interesting mix between unstructured, for a longer period of time, 2 weeks or a month, in these places. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, the easiest way to describe it, or maybe the catchy way to describe it. But there's a lot of depth in that and sort of how we do what we do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you talk about, and on your site, you say co-creation is important to you guys. So it sounds like this is a program where it's truly the people that come onto it are half the curriculum. Like they can bring their own skill sets and teach a course on whatever, but it's really created by the members, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is, I think, a philosophy that we have to, travel and community creation in general, is that, people don't just want to be passive consumers of an experience, especially I think the kinds of people that go on Unsettled, the kinds of people who tend to want to work and travel and who are looking for more driven experiences abroad, is that they're not seeking to be passive consumers. They want to be active creators, right? They want to go somewhere and be a part of a community, contribute to a place, contribute to others' experiences, sort of like a choose your own adventure, right? They don't want to be told what to do. They want to create an experience around what they're seeking out of that. And so, we take that approach to how we design experiences. We do have different workshops, events, and programming that we run. Some core ones that are for us that are around how do we build community over this period of 2 weeks or a month? How do we encourage participation? How do we help people achieve their goals, keep themselves accountable, and connect people around things that they're interested in doing or exploring over the 2 weeks or the month? But it's all designed around, what do you have to give and what do you want to learn? And so everybody's coming from unique backgrounds. Like you said, we've had farmers, CEOs, designers, developers, people from 70 countries around the world and all ages who all have a different set of experiences and backgrounds to share. And I think, was to provide a platform for that to gel and to run an experience that is designed around, each participant being able to, I think, live the best version of themselves, contribute to the community in the way that they want to, and get what they want from that experience. And that's designed around, obviously, the people that are on the experience, about 15 to 20 people. It's designed around the people and the locations. So, people in Buenos Aires or Bali or Cape Town. It's designed around the place itself and what that place has to offer. So, what is it that Bali has to offer that's different than Cape Town, that's different than Morocco? And then obviously the purpose, which is, what are people seeking out of this experience, right? Is it growth? Is it time to sort of reset? Is it time to finish something? Is it time to get something off the ground? Is it time to take stock of, what you've been working on and where you've been and what you want to do over the next, 5, 10, 15 years of your career? So, I think when you bring those together, it's really about giving people time and space to break out of the routine, but then create something together. And as a result, any Unsettled month is completely different from the last one. We never have the same experience as a result of just the way we design them.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Can you talk about the origin story? Like, what were you doing before this? I know I saw you were a photojournalist for a while, but like, what compelled you to start this company?
Yeah. So I was a photojournalist for a long time, and journalist as well. I was based in Africa and the Middle East. And, for most of my 20s, I actually never had a office job, right? I had never had to go in 9 to 5 and work in a single space. I'd always been working remotely, working for myself, freelancing, and it's an incredible lifestyle. And I think having the freedom to choose and having the freedom to live that life and decide, where you want to go and what you want to work on is an incredible privilege and an incredible luxury. And I think for me, it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? The ability to choose to live anywhere that you want to live and work from anywhere that you want to work is both exhilarating and can also be lonely, right? I think, a lot of people who maybe listen to this podcast, or, a lot of people that, signed up for Unsettled or these other programs have sort of reached a point where, it's amazing to have this global network, but unless you actually see them and spend time with them, like, how are you deriving meaning from those relationships, and how are those relationships actually adding value to your life? And so myself and my co-founder, Michael, he had kind of a similar backstory. He was an editor. He worked for MIT for 4 years running a publication for them, but never stepped foot on the MIT campus in Boston. So we actually started by organizing a sailing trip for about 30 of our friends. And it was just a chance to kind of totally unplug, not work related, and was a way for us to really just connect, get together, have a great time. And I think through that week, it was, I think, one of the most inspiring weeks of my life, because the depth of conversations about, work, life, love, spirituality, everything in between, we had that space to really dive in. And you think about, boat, it's a pretty contained space. We had about 4 boats, each is about 8 people, and I don't know the square meterage of it, but you're tiny, and you're stuffed in there, and it's a pretty intense experience. But through that, you build really strong relationships. And so a lot of us on that trip started thinking about, well, how can we kind of blend this into our lives more often, right? Why do we have to go sailing for a week? Why can't we go and actually bring our work selves with us and be productive and carry on these types of conversations, these ideas, this sort of inspiration we're getting from each other in this exchange? And so we started running a couple experiments with friends, and about 2 years after we kind of ran that first sailing trip is when we launched Unsettled full time. And so we went into the TED Residency and kind of started picking things up in about mid 2016.
So was the TED Residency, so you had the idea for this, and then the TED Residency followed that, and then the talk that I saw was basically you guys already had this idea in motion at that point?
Yeah, exactly. So we applied to the TED Residency with Unsettled as sort of our project to be incubated. And it was an incredible experience. And if anybody has the opportunity to apply for it, I highly recommend it. It's an amazing group, amazing support network. We were the first class, so we were very much an experiment for them on how they build community and incubate community, over a 3-month period in their office. And so, it was a great way to meet really interesting people, to challenge ourselves, to have the support of TED, and to test out some of the ideas we had for kind of designing experiences and building community with this really global community of people who were at TED. So it kind of served as an incubator for us, an incubator for the way that we think of community and the way that we built out Unsettled from there.
Yeah. So if you're listening or watching, I highly recommend you check out his TED Talk. It's only like 6 minutes long, but it's brilliantly done. And you said something in it that I want to touch on. You said, the whole thing was called The Power of Privilege, but you said there is no truth. Like, you made the statement that there is no truth, which is a bold thing to say, but I agree with you. Can you unpack that a little bit and explain to people listening, what does that mean?
Yeah. I think in the world of fake news, and I'm just watching the series, The Fourth Estate, and a lot of this idea of sort of where does truth lie and where does truth now is pretty present. And so, for me, the idea that there is no truth just comes to everything is perspective. Our realities are formed by the perspectives that we have and by the situations that we grew up in. And I think, oftentimes it's really only through seeing the world through somebody else's eyes and being able to understand, what they've been through and what they've gone through. I mean, something as simple as just being able to be empathetic to what their experience is. There is so many competing ideologies and thoughts and ideas and perspectives and realities in the world that I think, some things are fundamentally true, like this table is wood and, this wall is white. But somebody may be colorblind and see that maybe this isn't white, or maybe this isn't brown, or maybe this isn't gray, and I think to understand where people are coming from, to understand what they're looking at, and to understand how they view the world, is to really understand how we can exist and coexist as humans. And so, I think the talk was tied around how privilege is the ability to sort of see multiple perspectives, to experience multiple realities. For me to be able to embed myself in the midst of a revolution in Egypt and understand what people are going through, not completely, but at least see it through their eyes. And to understand that, if I was in their situation, would I view things differently? As a Westerner who grew up in, a democratic city, I was taught to believe that democracy is right. But living other places, some people think that democracy is not the best way, right? And so it's about how do we challenge our assumptions and use that to understand other people's realities. And I think travel is one way to do that. I think it is one way to understand what privileges we have and what privileges we don't. And so, it's a lot to sort of unpack within that, but it is sort of an exploration of how privilege and truth and perspective is sort of tied together.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. I don't know if you've seen this clip, but there's somewhere a clip. It's like a 5-minute clip with an ex-CIA agent, and she's talking about how when she overseas talks to these people, and she's saying, like, you realize from their perspective, like all these movies that we grew up with, like Star Wars and Independence Day and like the rebel up against the big empire. She says, you realize to these people, we are that evil empire. And it's purely a matter of perspective.
He said, is that to us, to the rest of the world, you are the empire and we are Luke and Han. You are the aliens and we are Will Smith. But the truth is, when you talk to the people who are really fighting on the ground, on both sides, and ask them why they're there, they answer with hopes for their children, specific policies that they think are cruel or unfair. And while it may be easier to dismiss your enemy as evil, hearing them out on policy concerns is actually an amazing thing, because as long as your enemy is a subhuman psychopath that's going to attack you no matter what you do, this never ends. But if your enemy is a policy, however complicated, that we can work with.
So I guess, what's the ask of that TED Talk? Like, what was the, what did you want people to do differently who are listening to that TED Talk?
What's your big idea worth spreading? I think it's seek the difference in life. For me, I've always sought to see things differently, to take a different path, or to challenge myself. And so for me, the call to action of that really is, what can you do to challenge your perspective, right? What can you do on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis to continue to push yourself outside of your comfort zone and see things differently, right? To be able to understand how other people view this world. And whether that's, simply on a daily basis, reading a conservative newspaper if you're a liberal, or reading a liberal newspaper if you're a conservative, or if it's traveling to a place, solo to really understand and immerse yourself in a new culture or environment. If it's, there's small actions that you can take, not just big actions like quitting your job and traveling the world and trying to understand all the cultures in the world. You're never going to accomplish that. But there's certain things that you can do to continually push your boundaries and challenge your worldview. And I think the idea is that when those opportunities come up, take them, right? Somebody invites you to dinner that may be different from you, that you may have not had experience with their community or understanding, and they want you to join their family for dinner. Take it, go. Those sort of opportunities, I think, come more often when you're traveling. But even in your daily routine, I think there's ways to incorporate that in. And, if you live in a big city like New York, there's a ton of communities here. There's so many ways to engage with people who may view the world differently than you and see things differently than you. If only you take those opportunities, I think you will have a greater understanding of the world that we live in.
Yeah. Well, I like that it's baked into the name itself, be unsettled, right? Like it's almost like this positive discomfort. We talked about it in another episode, but it's like this notion that discomfort is good. Like put yourself in uncomfortable situations because that's how we grow, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the name is, we chose an intentionally provocative name as Unsettled because it is about turning something that is often perceived as a negative and translating into a positive and saying that, listen, we've all felt unsettled in our lives at some point, right? We've all felt that feeling of something's not right here. I'm not comfortable. How can you own that, embrace that, and say that's a good thing, right? That is actually a catalyst for how we grow. That is a catalyst for how we change and how we evolve as humans. And I think in the world that we live in today, where change is happening so quickly, right? On a technological basis, on a social basis, on a political basis, on a professional basis, right? We sort of always are being demanded to be at the top of our game. And so being unsettled to me is about being able to embrace that idea of uncertainty and embrace that idea of not knowing and embracing that idea that, things are going to change. So where can I take ownership of that change, right? Where can I take ownership of how I change or how I adapt to that change? And it starts with just making yourself uncomfortable over and over and over again to understand your own internal process of how you deal with uncertainty and change.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up because I've always had this thought, and we talked about it again in a different episode, but that we get basically stress tested on the road. They're like all things being equal, if you had two people and you have one person who's got a nomadic existence and one person who's got the sedentary existence, that person who's just continuously faced with these little challenges every day of things that they don't know, that it builds like, I don't know, it's like doing push-ups for resilience or skill training. There's some, what other traits? Yeah, that's maybe a better question. Like what traits do you think that this type of lifestyle engenders in people?
I was going to say resilience. You nailed it. It is building resilience. I think in the economy today, just speaking from a professional perspective, it's being able to understand the global economy, being able to be adaptable to different situations and environments and having that sort of flexibility and exercising that muscle of, how do I adapt to change, right? With any industry, they're changing incredibly rapidly. And I think, travel and living and working remotely and sort of living this nomadic lifestyle, I think prepares you for that far more than just staying in one place. I think on a converse, I think it can also maybe subtract from other parts of the human experience that can be essential, building relationships and how to sustain relationships. If you're moving from one place to the next all the time, you can sort of potentially build bad patterns and habits of, sort of fleeting relationships and loose ties and loose connections that I think actually hurt us internally. And that's sort of why Unsettled focuses so much on building community and building really strong community over that period of months so that you can then stay connected and kind of move all over the world with these people, which does happen. But, I think it does exercise those muscles of resilience, and it does also maybe feed into tendencies of avoidance or of kind of hypermobility that you have to just be aware of. And I think it's always a sort of conscious understanding of what am I doing? why am I doing it? What am I hoping to get out of this? And, I ask that to myself every single month, right? When I'm traveling and I'm working, I sit and I be intentional about, okay, where am I going this month and why am I going there, right? What am I hoping to get out of that? As opposed to just, drifting through life, just trying to experience as much as I can.
Yeah, no, I definitely, so I went through remote year and I can definitely testify. I mean, 99% the best thing I've ever done, but like the negatives would be we set the bar for stimulation so high, and you just like the amount of stimuli you get when if you go back to a normal, sedentary existence, you just feel like just so understimulated, like there's not like,
it's like taking ecstasy, right? You're like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, wow. And then you come back down, like, oh, this is reality. Well, how do I get back up there again? And I think, travel and adventure, and it builds this sort of dopamine in us, and it accelerates us and excites us. But how do you balance that with something that's more sustaining and more long lasting, right? And I think you probably agree that the most long lasting thing out of your experience was the people that you met and the relationships that you formed, and those probably continue to this day, and you're probably meeting up with them all over the world. And so, that's what we find as well, is that there's this isolated experience that is this incredible blast of inspiration, of excitement, of exploration, of experimentation. But then when that's done, you need something that continues that. I think the relationships and how you build community after an experience is actually sort of the long-lasting value of how you carry that on into your daily lives, whether it was the mindset that you had, whether it was the routines that you changed, or the things that you explored during that intentional sort of period of working and traveling or experiencing. The people are the ones who help you carry that forward.
Yeah. Well, so people, who is this for? Like we've got, let's say there's people already on the road, nomads who've been doing this for a while. And then you've got people who are listening, maybe who are thinking about trying the location independent lifestyle. Do you cater to both groups, or who's the ideal candidate for you guys?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because we do have a really diverse community. And part of that is by design. So I would say, roughly one way to break it out is about a third of participants on Unsettled are people who, are entrepreneurs, freelancers, CEOs, consultants, people who, either are living this lifestyle already or have the ability to, and kind of have this freedom and flexibility built into their lives. And Unsettled kind of fits a specific need for, I really want to explore this place. I want to do it with a group of people that's going to challenge me and help me grow. And so that's about a third. I think another third are, people who may have more traditional corporate jobs and are taking a sort of semi-structured sabbatical, or they maybe run their own company and have sort of just gotten the time and space to be able to take an experience like this. They maybe have reached 2 years, 3 years of their company and say, great, like I can finally kind of work remotely for a little bit. And then the final third, I would say, are people who are really looking for a more semi-structured sabbatical, right? They are people who have just quit their job, who are in a major intentional career transition, where maybe they're thinking about going back to school, or maybe they're back in school and studying. And they look at the time with Unsettled as being a space to think about those next steps, to be productive in a way other than just, sitting out on a laptop and grinding out for 6-10 hours a day. They look at it more as a space to find clarity, to develop new ideas, to meet people who are going to inspire them. And I think, we bring those groups together, and it works really well, because, you're not just all sort of entrepreneurs working on an idea. You're not just all people who are in transition and asking big questions, but it's actually the sort of confluence and mixing of ideas between the two that really, I think, challenges people to grow.
Yeah. Well, definitely the diversity, again, like speaking only from what I know, I've never done Unsettled, but that diversity of age, of backgrounds, cultures, like it would not have been the same experience for our group on remote year were that not the case. And so I'm glad to hear that you guys purposely try to mix it up like that.
Yeah, it's and people find this surprising, is that, only 40% of our participants are North American, right? So we have about 60% from Africa, Asia, Middle East, South America, Europe. And that's, part of it's intentional, and part of it is just, I think we stumbled upon a need that is far more global than just, your burnt out corporate executive in New York, or, your remote worker from, the Netherlands. So I think, we've intentionally kind of curated that, and it adds a lot to the experience of having that diversity of age, where most people assume, again, that this is something for people who are in their early 20s. Our average age is about 35. So we do span, quite older, I think, than the average. And it's because people are looking for sort of more of an intentional travel experience. They're not looking to party, although, we do have a good time. They're looking for something that's going to add a little bit more value to their career and their lives at that stage. So, we've had people from, I think, 19 to 74 and everything in between.
Well, it's a good segue, because my next question was going to be, how do you guys differentiate? I mean, there's a whole landscape now out there of these kind of programs, but you guys, I would argue, Roam, Wi-Fi Tribe, Remote Year, those are the ones that I kind of think of in terms of like the upper echelon. How do you position yourself against those? And someone looking at all those, why would this be appealing for them? Why is Unsettled? Who's it right for?
Sure. I mean, all those guys, Remote Year, Roam, Hackers Paradise, they're all, I think, running great companies and doing amazing things. I think they all fit into the market and the needs a little bit differently. I mean, Roam is really a housing provider. Remote Year is, work remotely around the world if you have a remote job. I think where Unsettled comes in is, we're really that place that gives you time, space, and structure to break out of your routine and get inspired, right? It's not just about working remotely, right? It's about going to a place and exploring with, an intentional group that is looking for a meaningful experience, looking for a community that's going to challenge them and inspire them, and looking for something that is a bit more than just, I'm going to go and work and travel, right? It's why we've spent so much time on designing experiences and co-creating experiences. So I would say the differentiator is, if you want an experience that is going to give you an active role in that experience, if you're looking for something that's going to be a catalyst for conversation or change, Unsettled is I think, a stronger fit than maybe a program that is just designed around, working remotely and traveling. So, it comes down to the community, it comes down to the diversity, and it comes down to just how we connect participants. And, I think the best thing is actually to speak to our alumni and let them speak for themselves, because they can say it in so many more words and so much more stronger words than I could about what that experience actually means.
Yeah, I mean, in hearing you describe it, it reminds me almost of, have you ever heard of bar camp? Like the Unconference was their thing.
I've heard of it.
It's this notion of like a self-created conference where you show up and people kind of gravitate to groups, and someone says, oh, I'm going to lead a talk on this. And so that, like, it's this very like emergent behavior in a conference versus like, this is the agenda and these are the talks that are being held.
It requires you to show up, right? With Unsettled, like, you have to show up. And you can show up however you want. You can attend everything that we do. You can not attend everything that we do. You can make family style dinner on Monday night. So you could, just kind of sit there and hang out and enjoy the conversation and eat food somebody else makes for you. It's entirely your choice. And I think that's the beauty of the experience that we curate and how we run our programs. And so, it is a bit different, but it's something that we found is what people are looking for, at least the people who come on Unsettled.
Sure. And you do, so these retreats, so that it's multiple months in the same location. It's not like boom, 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 boom. It's like you go for, or you can go for up to like 3 months in a location, or can you talk a little bit about how it actually works?
Yeah, so we have sort of two programs right now. One is sort of just 1 month and one is 2 weeks. So we have some destinations that run for a month, some that run for, just for 2 weeks, for people who really can't quit their job or can't work remotely full time. And so, we'll be in one location for maybe 6 to 8 months out of the year. So Buenos Aires, for example, we ran 3 months in a row, but most times it was just a whole new set of participants each month. So most people come for just 1 month or just 1 2-week experience. And then they come back maybe a couple months later for another trip or another destination. There's no requirement of signing up for X number of experiences. We get a lot of alumni who do come back and join either our sort of month-long trips again. We also run week-long adventure trips for alumni. So we do a big sailing trip every year, kind of in honor of how we started. We're running one later this year in Thailand. And so, we're offering a lot to our alumni community, but the sort of flexibility to pick and choose and say, great, I want to be in Buenos Aires in April, and then maybe I'll be in Barcelona in June, and then maybe I want to go to Cape Town in November. We give people sort of full agency and flexibility to choose the months that they want and sign up for 1 month, sign up for 5 months. It's entirely up to them.
Cool. And do those people have a method like through you guys to stay in touch, or do they just like develop WhatsApp groups amongst their own, or do you guys actually have infrastructure for them to keep in contact?
Yeah, we've been building infrastructure. We have about, I think, just over 1,000 alumni around the world now. And so WhatsApp is obviously a very strong means of communication for the retreat itself. So kind of post-retreat, how they stay in touch. And then we've built some internal systems, Facebook groups and other things that we've built out to keep our alumni connected, and then sort of running more events in different cities and just finding ways. And actually, to be honest, most of it has happened organically. So I would say any given week, there's 4 to 5 alumni meetups happening around the world that we've had absolutely no part in. We have an alumni who's, I think, got 11 or 10 people from one Bali trip to join her on a safari in Tanzania, later this year. So these kinds of things are happening really organically, and we're sort of trying to add some structures to support people, but not obviously take control of it, because we've worked with a lot of communities and seen how they grow. And for us, it's important to understand what people are looking for first before you come in and say, here's what you need.
Got it. So it's a la carte, monthly or 2 weeks. Come and go as you choose, find a new program, stay in touch with people. You're developing the infrastructure to really meld the community together. That's awesome. Where do you guys see this going? Like, if you're what you're able to share, like what's your roadmap with this thing? What do you envision?
Yeah, a lot of things, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. We look at Living Unsettled as not just a month, a week, a day, a moment. It's a philosophy, right? It's an approach to life. Like we talked about before of, how can you live unsettled in every moment and take the choice that allows you to embrace uncertainty and embrace the unknown. And so how do we integrate that into people's lives and make it more accessible? I think everybody is looking for some element of unsettled, right? And as we grow it, I think, we're going to continue running incredible month-long experiences and incredible 2-week-long experiences. We're going to expand the number of destinations that we run. I think we're going to diversify the kinds of experiences that we run and just always seek to improve what we do. Our vision is to really run world-class experiences for that help people live more boldly in every moment. And I think in doing that, we're constantly discovering what people are looking for and reacting to that. As our community grows, we're really looking to serve our community and say, what else can we do for this group that is looking for experiences that challenge them? And so, we're keeping an eye on, I think, just the entire space and market and what people are interested in when it comes to travel and work and this lifestyle, but also, as we grow our community, being responsive to their needs and what they're looking for and how we support them as they grow. I wouldn't be surprised in 2 years or 3 years from now that Unsettled has, 20,000 people, 30,000 people around the world who've been a part of our experiences, if not many more.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, the space itself, it's like the other day, I understand WeRoam, they actually folded from what I understand, but then you've got like WeWork that has $8 billion in funding or something, like with a B, 8 billion that they've raised. So you've got these kind of like different views on the space. I mean, it seems like it could be huge. Have we hit peak nomadism, or do you see this thing going like only more and more people going location independent?
That's a great question. I don't think we've hit peak nomadism. I think it's such a combination of factors and things happening right now, whether it's the devolution of the workplace that's allowing people to live this lifestyle more, whether it's the ease of travel that's allowing people to, just pick up and go across the world in, a day's notice. I think all these things are opening up more opportunities. And so I think you'll see the industry develop in a way that serves different needs. WeWork serves a very specific need of office space. They're really good at creating office space and experiences around office space. And, their growth is very much tied to, the sort of small team or independent worker all over the world who needs a place to work. We're catering to people who are seeking experiential travel and who want to combine the professional element of their life with travel. Other programs are seeking more like specific professional skills, right? So a coding boot camp in Bali, for example, is for somebody looking to learn a specific skill. So I think, there's so many opportunities as people look to blend more parts of life together, but also maybe separate them out. And I think you're going to see this space grow in a number of ways, from the actual accommodations and operations side, from the types of experiences that are offered, to the specificity of the kinds of travel experiences that people are looking for. I feel like we're really, only at the beginning of this.
Yeah. Well, I hope the diversity stays, though, because as it does become more specific and focused, to me, it would have been a shame if it was like just a group of traveling salespeople on remote year in our group. That would have ruined the diversity of it. So hopefully you can keep that the diversity there.
Yeah, and I think it's really a matter of just opening up to the rest of the world and saying, hey, like just because just because the typical model is a coder from San Francisco who's traveling the world and sort of just living cheaply, just because that's a stereotype doesn't mean that's the truth. Back to what is the truth? There's as many people in Istanbul or in Amman or in Beirut who have the capability to work remotely as maybe somebody in New York or San Francisco. And it's really about saying, is anybody opening this up to them? Is anybody offering this to them, right? So it's actually a conscious effort of companies and people in this space saying, there are people from all over the world who are looking for these kinds of experiences. Are you offering it to them? And we've said, absolutely we want to, because we know the value that can be gained from keeping that diversity.
Did you guys actively, because if it's 60% foreign, so remote year was much more skewed to American people, I think. I'm just curious, did you guys actively go and seek out and promote to those folks to get that level of international diversity, or is that just naturally what's kind of come to the website?
I think it's come through a result of early on our own networks, just the sort of organizations that we've been a part of and the travels that we've had in our own personal networks and building this from the beginning. And then from sort of there onwards, I think it was or has been a targeted approach to really bring together a really amazing international community. So, I wouldn't say it's something that we've, made a very structured approach towards. It's just kind of always been our philosophy of how do we build a global community? And this is the way that we do it.
Yeah, very cool. All right, well, I'm going to switch gears here and go very tactical, just some specific, like Tim Ferriss-y type questions to ask you. Is there anything you read or listen to on a regular basis? Like how do you get your information? Is there any sites or blogs or podcasts or anything that you just personally find yourself going back to?
I'm a big podcast guy. I listen to the New York Times, The Daily. For bullshit, I listen to There's No Such Thing as a Fish. It's a great podcast from the guys at QI. Hilarious sort of tidbits of facts. BBC sort of broadcast podcasts. But yeah, there's nothing that I have a sort of a routine at the moment. There's a great newsletter that is called, I think it's called On Human Innovation, on Human Experience. Now I'm going to forget the name and be embarrassed, but it's one that I do love reading. It's by, I'm going to forget the name.
No, it's all good. If you think of it, we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah. That's about it. I'm not great with routine, as maybe the name of the company implies. So.
Right on. What about any travel hacks, things that you've kind of picked up from, wisdom from the road that you could share with fellow nomaders?
Travel light and always bring a toothbrush in your carry-on. I think that's a pretty solid rule. No, I mean, I think the thing that saved me most traveling over the past, year or two is a little backup battery for my phone. That's been like the number one thing, and a phone plan that allows me to get data internationally for free. I think those two things have made life incredibly easy, where I can land in Nicaragua, I can land in Buenos Aires, I can land anywhere in the world pretty much, and instantly be able to connect, use my data, and work if I have to, take a call. So that has saved me a ton of time and effort. Other travel tips forthcoming. I'll think about that.
Fair enough. Well, what about any apps that you find yourself using regularly? Any mobile apps that make life easier on the road?
I'm not a big app guy, to be honest. I try to limit my technology use as much as I possibly can, because I'll spend 15 hours a day sitting at a computer. I will try to sort of unplug for the rest of it. So no travel apps. I'm not a big fan of travel apps. Beyond Google Maps, that's kind of probably my most used.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So someone listening, they want to do this. What's the advice? I saw you guys have an application process on your site. Is that just send them to beunsettled.co?
Yeah, send them to beunsettled.co and feel free to have them recommend you. It's how they heard about us, and maybe we'll hook up a little discount. I would really say before applying, understand what do you want out of this experience, right? What are you looking for a month or for 2 weeks, right? Are you looking for an adventure? Are you looking for personal growth? Are you looking for just some time and space to work remotely? Are you looking for, to complete a new project? Understand kind of what you're looking for, and I think that'll help us help you think about where to go and timing and all of those things. So we've got an amazing admissions team who take hundreds of calls every week, who are really great at kind of understanding how we can best help people with Unsettled and where they want to go. So they would be more than happy to chat.
Cool. So be introspective, think about what you want to get out of it. What about, this is the last question, but to that person who's listening, who's never done this before, who is actually on the fence and not sure if this type of lifestyle, if they'll be able to hack it, what do you say to the person who's considering it for the first time?
What's actually holding you back, and what's the worst that can happen? And if you don't have a great answer to either of those, go for it. And if you do have a good answer to them, see if you can work around it.
Good deal, man.
I don't think it is. I mean, it is interesting because it's not for everybody, right? It's not for everybody. But I think what I say is kind of to what I spoke about earlier about embracing that unsettled, embracing that uncomfort is try something, right? At least take an experiment, at least go for 2 weeks, at least go for a month and see if this kind of lifestyle is for you. And I think companies like Unsettled and others in the space allow you to sort of have a soft landing and test this kind of lifestyle out before, quitting your job or going remotely full time. And I think that's a real value add. And so if you are on the fence, think about what's the worst that can happen. And is there a way for you to make yourself comfortable experimenting or trying it for 2 weeks or a month and see where that could take you?
Well, who is it not for? So let me ask you, maybe that's a better question. So you said it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Have you seen it go wrong for some people? And if so, what are the characteristics of the person who this doesn't fit for?
Yeah, it's a really great question, actually. I would say it's not for people who aren't interested in creating a community, right? Some people just want to travel solo and don't want to be a part of a community. They just want to kind of go in between. And I would say, go off and travel solo. It's a different kind of adventure, right? We're not competing for people who want to go spend a month or two alone. That's not people, I think, who come to Unsettled. It's people who've done that and have reached a point where they actually value being a part of a shared experience. So I would say that's a big one. Second is people who aren't interested in contributing and just expect everything to be handed to them. I would say that's not what we do. We're not a guided tour. We're not there to pamper you. We're there to take care of you and give you a platform and to make you comfortable and to make you feel, ready for whatever is to come. But we're not a guided tour. So I would say that's an expectation that definitely wouldn't align. And then the third, I think is the most important, is just don't be an asshole. That's pretty much baseline, is be open to new people, new ideas, new perspectives. If you're somebody who's going to challenge everybody who comes your way, probably not the best fit.
Cool. All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time. If you're listening, beunsettled.co is the website. You can go and apply there. And man, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks a lot, Sean. It was a pleasure.
All right. See ya.
Take care.
Okay, that was my conversation with Jonathan. I hope you found that useful. If you have a question for Jonathan, you can leave a written comment below his episode on nomadpodcast.com. You can also record a quick video question using your webcam. So Nomad Podcast is now syndicated by all kinds of platforms. If you've been listening via audio on any of the audio-only platforms, I would challenge you to actually switch it up and maybe check out the next episode on video. All the videos are found on the website. Vice versa, if you've been watching the videos, maybe consider going to your favorite podcasting platform and subscribing. So next episode, listen while you're in the car on your commute or on a run. As Jonathan would say, shift your perspective here. Constantly seek to choose a different angle in how you consume the content. So if you're considering doing a nomadic travel program, you can save up to $300 off select programs simply by applying via our discounts page. You'll find that link in the footer of our website under the program discounts, or simply go to nomadpodcast.com/discounts to apply for any of the available programs there. Note, if you do apply directly to the program itself, it does invalidate your opportunity to get the discount, so be sure you apply via our form. Nomad Podcast is supported in part by Nomad Prep, an online academy for aspiring digital nomads taught by yours truly, and that teaches you everything you need to know how to successfully make the transition to this lifestyle of the digital nomad. Get the first 4 days of this 2-week program completely free by going to nomadprep.com/podcast. Nomad Prep, take your job on the road and take on the world. If you've enjoyed the content thus far, the greatest compliment you can give is to actually share this with a friend. I know we all have someone we know that's talked about going remote, taking their job on the road. Would love it if you share the podcast. Alternatively, maybe consider sharing it on your social media, post it to your Facebook, send a tweet out. I know now Instagram, you can actually take the Instagram posts and share it to your story. So we are Nomad Prep is the handle across all social media. So if you feel so inclined, would love it if you shared the podcast to spread the word. As far as upcoming guests, in keeping with this trend of interviewing founders, I'm going to be talking to the founder or the co-founder and CEO of Remote Year next week. So I'm very excited to talk to Greg Kaplan. He's a neat guy. I've met him a couple times in person, and he is always just full of energy. So that should be an interesting conversation. Lastly, if you are a blogger and you are currently traveling, consider adding yourself to nomadbloggers.com. This is a travel platform, again, something I run on a volunteer basis right now, but it syndicates the blog posts of people currently on the road. So you can find that nomadbloggers.com and just click the blue submit button in the header to add yourself there or to apply. Okay, so we're getting great feedback so far. If you've listened this far, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, it's just a blast, and it's an honor to have this role of kind of helping distribute this information. So until next time, it's a big world out there. Get out and explore it, and I will see you on the road.
Nomad.